All right, I am joined now by Kyra Batara. Mogwai is your nickname. Uh, you're going to be headlining here soon. Combate February 18th, here from Burbank, California. Your opponent, Vanessa Rico Fernandez. And so, one of my first questions is I was looking a little bit into, both of your guys' backgrounds and stuff and, your last couple fights. How do you see her and your fighting styles? How do you see that, kind of molding together, and how do you see that fight being?
I think this fight will be really interesting, being that she does come from a very strong judo background, and all of her fights have finished by submission. Both her wins are by submission, but also both of her losses are by submission. She has a 8-time world champ record for judo, and that's very similar to the last girl I fought for Combate, which is Jenny Silverio, who is also a second-degree black belt in judo, but a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So after fighting Jenny, I feel like I was very prepared for a judo girl. I was prepared for a grappler, being that Jenny was a purple belt, same level as me. And so I think that fight will be very similar. She's short. Jenny was 4'9", and I believe Vanessa is 4'10", 4'11". So it's nothing that I haven't prepared for. I'm always ready for anything. I don't try to study too hard on my opponents just in case of opponent changes or them coming up with a different game plan. I really try to just focus on me sharpening my tools. So myself going into this fight, I feel great. My striking's on point. It's going to be the same story with all my fights. I'm going to show some striking, but I know that my wrestling is what gets me the win, so I'm going to take her down and get that submission.
That's interesting because, I was looking up a little bit of your background, and I see that you started, basically cheerleading, then you went into wrestling, and you can see, like, progression. You went into jiu-jitsu, and then finally when you were able to join into MMA, that's what you did. So talk about that journey. How was that journey that you kind of it seems like you had a direct path that you knew you were going to go into MMA. How did you transition from, one of the most, like, girl things possible, like a cheerleading thing, and then, like, basically, at 18 you're, punching another girl in the face? Like, how does that transition happen?
Yeah, I've always been a very competitive kid. I always wanted to do sports. I was competitive in PE class. Like, anything I did, I had to excel at. I was also a Girl Scout, which is, like, completely random, too. So, but everything I do, I always wanted to be the best at. And I always wanted to have the coolest art project, or I wanted to be the number one in my class, get the best grades. And so not even just in sports, but I always just wanted to excel. And so then after I did cheer and dance, I also did competitive dance for a while. I got into jiu-jitsu just because my dad wanted me to learn some self-defense, and he was a fan of Pride, and so he thought it'd be cool to kind of get some father-daughter bonding time in. And after we started training together, I just quickly fell in love with the sport. I fell in love with the art of it and learning all the submissions, hanging out with my dad. I've always been a daddy's girl, so it was really fun just hanging out with him and learning something new. When I decided to stop cheerleading, I felt like all the body mechanics of cheer really helped with my jiu-jitsu, just my flexibility, my balance. And so I was really quick to learn jiu-jitsu. Shortly after I started training, I entered into my first jiu-jitsu tournament after only 3 months, and I swept the competition, beating these boys that were bigger than me. Then I met Eddie Bravo after doing a few more jiu-jitsu tournaments and just beating everyone, not anyone scoring on me, just going through everyone. And I did my first Worlds tournament at 13 years old and ran into Eddie Bravo, had him corner me, and Eddie just fell in love with me. He saw something in me that no one else had seen before, and he told me, he's like, you're going to be a world champion one day. And having someone believe in me that was that high level with a name like that, it really stuck with me, and I wanted to prove to him that I could be a world champion one day. So I kept in contact with him, and I told him, look, I'm really falling in love with all the sport. I'm falling in love with kickboxing, boxing, jiu-jitsu. I want to do more. I feel like I could actually make MMA a career for me. I know I'm only 13, but this is a dream that I now have. And he was like, okay, well, you're 13. You need to wrestle in high school. I promise you, if you wrestle in high school, that's going to be the best thing for you. And so I listened to him. I was like, all right, I'll trust you. I'll wrestle in high school. And sure enough, high school wrestling, it was something that I excelled at. I was the first ever male or female to make it to my high school state finals, and I went undefeated the entire year. I lost in the finals, but that was the most that ever came out of my high school in Washington. There's 1,600 girl wrestlers in Washington. And right after that, I transitioned into MMA because I knew that was my dream at 13 years old. I was like, okay, I'm 18 now. I'm done with wrestling. Now I can fight. And everything just fell through from there. Followed my dream for MMA.
Wow, yeah, that's really interesting because I was looking through some of your fights, and you can tell your strong wrestling background. Your takedowns and how powerful your takedowns can be. And I wanted to ask you, seeing as because you mentioned pride and everything, how was your experience going to Japan and fighting for a Japanese organization? You didn't get the result you wanted, but I mean that environment of being among those fans and being among in that arena and everything, and just kind of where like MMA kind of became what it is now. Like, how was that experience for you?
Yeah, that whole experience was so surreal. I'd been watching Pride since I was a baby with my dad. Like, he'd always have me wear Vanderlei shirts and always cheering on Vanderlei. So that's all I knew growing up. And then actually when I was in the ring, it was dead silent. You fight in Japan, nobody cheers unless there's a big move. The whole room is dead silent. And all I could hear was Vanderlei ringside cornering me, telling me combos, and it was the best experience of my life. I was like, this is incredible. Like, this is my idol growing up. This is the one guy that my dad loved watching, that had me watch almost every weekend, just watching tapes of him. We have VHS tapes recorded of Pride fights from Vanderlei, and so it was really cool to experience that, just the way everything works over in Japan, how they don't really care about records in Japan. They just want a good fight, and there's so much respect. So when I went out there, I took a beating by their 115-pounder, Kanako Murata. She's a very strong fighter, and but they said that I hung in there. I fought back all the way to the end, and they loved it. They said they wanted to have me back, and I would definitely go back there and fight, but at 105 this time.
Yeah, that was really interesting because, me watching the fight, of course, I'm a couch potato, but me watching the fight, I felt that basically the biggest reason that I saw that you had trouble in that fight was because you are more used to like a cage or an octagon or anything like that, and it's like that rope. I mean, a lot of people that go to Japan and Pride and stuff like that and fight in a ring, they say that's a really big transitional difference. How was it for you?
Yeah, it was. It was really weird because I'm used to getting the takedown off the cage. I'm used to being able to use my foot to kick off the cage. And they did tell me in the rules meeting, if it goes to the ring, we're going to set you guys back up in the center. And I felt like my small body was hanging outside the ropes majority of the fight. And every time I would get against the ropes, I had practiced with Joe Stevenson, who'd been to Japan numerous times, had fought in Japan, has cornered guys in Japan. And we'd been training off the ropes to be able to kick off the ropes, to be able to use the ropes to our advantage. And every time I would get next to the ropes, they'd actually have guys from the outside kicking my feet off the ropes. They would use their hands to push my feet off the ropes so I couldn't use it. So that was really frustrating. I didn't think that would happen. And even there was a point in the fight where I had my head sticking out the ropes. I was about belly button deep outside the ropes. And I was like, are they going to stop it? Or are they going to put us back in the center? So I kind of look at the camera, and there's a really cool picture of me sticking out my tongue looking at the camera, thinking that they would restart us. And sure enough, like, I turn around, and she decks me with a hard hook. And so I was like, okay, well, we're playing Japan rules now. But it was an experience. I know the rules now. I know how it goes. I would definitely spar more in a ring now that I know they're going to kick my feet off the ropes. They're not going to let me use it. But like I said, if I go back, I'm going to be fighting a 105er. It's going to be a completely different story.
And I imagine also, like, I think the weirdest thing for me is that you have people actually, putting their hands on you to, like, support you or, like, push you. So, I mean, that probably even gives you, like, a weird, I don't know, like, other hands touching you, so you don't know where an attack is coming from. Like, in my opinion, I think that would be, like, a big thing for me, like, other people touching me and pushing me when you're trying to defend yourself. So I imagine, all those different factors are just, kind of just adding up in your head. But I did one of the big things from that fight too that I noticed is that as soon as you were able to kind of get yourself into position, like I think it was in the third round, I think you got yourself to a corner, and most people, most fighters that fight in a ring, once they get to a corner, that's kind of like over. But you were able to easily get back up and get the fight back to your kind of to a different range where you wanted it to be. So I thought it was just interesting, that whole dynamic of how that all of that worked, But
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
but speaking of that, how did you get into now that you're headlining for Combate? How did you get in contact with Combate, being a new company and everything? Because you've been to RFA, BAMA. I think you just did a submission only just a few months ago, correct? For for Randy Couture's what was it like?
Chael Sonnen's card.
Oh, it was Chael Sonnen. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
How did you decide to come to Combate and just kind of go for their their title and everything, because I know that's kind of your goal, that to become their first champion. So how did that come about?
Yeah, you're right. I was fighting for a lot of organizations. I fought for BAMA, I fought for RFA, I even fought for this organization in Montana that's a very small promotion. But the point I was at in my career was not the point where I predicted my future to be. I thought that I would run through these 105ers no problem, but I was very young when I went pro. I always took hard fights. My mom always pushed me, saying to fight tougher girls. I never had easy fights. I never fought for these small organizations in California to go against 0-0 girls or 0-3 girls. I was always going against girls that were going to challenge me. And being that I was so young in the sport, I was still figuring things out. One fight I had a really bad weight cut. Another fight I had a really bad camp. So it was just all figuring things out. But being that I was always doing that and still figuring things out as a pro, it did have a negative effect on my record. And so at that point, being that I thought I was going to go undefeated in my first few fights as a pro, I had this crazy record of 1-1, 1-2, 2-2, 3-2, and so it was constant back and forth, lose, win, and I was at the point where I was just begging for fights that I didn't know what I was going to do. I was just trying to find anything just to fight, and my mom had been in contact with one of the matchmakers, Mel, in California, always trying to get me on their card, and they could never find me 105ers, always 115ers, so I'd never really fought for him. But then one day, right before my 21st birthday, he called my mom and goes, "Hey, we had a girl pull out for our event in Vegas. I know you guys are living in Vegas now, so I was going to reach out to you guys. It is at 115, but it's Nicolai Rivera who fights 105. She's just making her debut at 115. She's going back up to 115." And immediately, like, we knew exactly who she was. She had been a 105er that I had my eye on for a while now. And it was 10 days notice, and right the next day we're supposed to go on a cruise for 3 days. And so my mom goes, "Look, we're going on a cruise for 3 days. She's turning 21 tomorrow. We'll be in Mexico, so we can't sign any contracts or anything, but yeah, we'll take it." So for 3 days I'm on a cruise, like drinking, eating whatever I want, and then I come home and I have 7 days to prepare for this fight. And I did it. I cut the weight to 115. I had 7 days just to kill my body, to try to get as much striking in as possible, being that I had only been doing jiu-jitsu the past few months because of, like you said, I was just doing like jiu-jitsu super fights. And so I was like, I know my jiu-jitsu is good, but I haven't been striking at all. And I went in there and I dominated all 3 rounds. I had her back all 3 rounds, took her down at will. And after that, Campbell was like, "Is it true that you were on a cruise 7 days before this fight?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was my 21st birthday." And he just thought that was insane because I threw a cartwheel pass that like never happens in MMA. It went viral on BJ Penn. So he's like, "I'm gonna keep you around." And ever since that, I've just been. He calls me his Ronda Rousey of Combate. So he's definitely helped me a lot with marketing stuff, flown me out to Miami, to New York. We went to Mexico. He took me to Japan to represent Combate. So it's been really good. It was just a right place, right time that I got that call for Combate and taking that chance. That's why I know the sport is hard, but you got to take chances sometimes, and I'm really glad that was one of those last minute fights that I took.
Yeah, that's amazing, and that fight was a really really good performance by you. A lot of people, you look at other people's records and you have, an undefeated record, but then you look at the names and there's no notable names in there. You do have, like Nick Dali on there. You have a couple other ladies that, not very well known, but you look at what they've done before and everything, and you kind of get an idea that you're not taking these easy, tomato can fights, as they would say. So, how does it feel to now have, basically be the center of attention for this event? I mean, I know you probably had a lot of attention thrown upon you when you went to Japan and everything, but now, like, this whole event is basically, the marketing and everything I've seen, it's about you. So how do you feel about that new attention towards you?
I do a lot better under pressure. I like being in the spotlight. I was a dancer. I was a cheerleader. I like the attention. I like people watching, and I know there's a bunch of social media drama, and there's a huge target on my back. Campbell's claiming for me to be the Ronda Rousey, so I do have a lot of hype to my name, and so it forces me to live up to that. It's like, all right, this is why I'm going to get the belt. This is why I'm undefeated in the Combate cage. This is why Campbell believes in me. And so it gives me a lot to prove, and I love it. I feed off of it. I'm taking all the energy that people think that they can beat me, or Campbell saying that I am the best, that I'm taking all that into consideration, that to this fight camp and doing whatever it takes to be number one, to keep that spot, to keep that name.
That's great. Again, you're going to be headlining Combate 11, February 18th from Burbank, California. Any sponsors or anybody that you want to thank and shout out before we finish here?
Yeah, I want to thank Holy Sheets. They're one of my big sponsors out here in Palmer Electric. I also want to give an announcement for one of my sister's friends just got diagnosed with leukemia, and the day of weigh-ins, we will actually be having an event in Burbank. So anyone is free to come. We're going to have $5 raffle tickets. I have a lot of my sponsors donating stuff. Sweet Sweat is donating some stuff. I talked to Fight Me Clothing. They'll be over there. I have Quest Bars, Quest Nutrition. They're going to be over there. So I'll be raffling off a whole bunch of stuff, but I'm really trying to raise money this whole fight camp. I just want to focus on trying to raise some money for my sister's friend back in Washington. He's 18 years old, just got diagnosed with leukemia. So I want to do whatever it takes to make sure that the awareness gets spread and that we can get some good donations. So spread the word for the Burbank. Right after weigh-ins, I'll be heading over to that event, and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, just Kyra Batara for details on the event, on time and place. Well,
that's amazing. I mean, all the pressure that you're going to be having, the weight cut and everything, and you're still, having an event for somebody in need. That's an amazing achievement for you. So I hope we can get a lot of people out there to participate in that. And I want to thank you for doing this interview with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. It was a great interview.
All right. Well, we'll be out there to see you weigh in and fight. So hope to see you there, and good luck on your fight.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.